Welcome. On this episode of Behind the Dream, we're joined by Precious, a contemporary mixed media artist, speaker, and educator whose work celebrates light, love, wonder, and connection. Precious creates both from intuition and play, helping adults reconnect with their creativity, not for perfection, but for healing, self-expression, and joy. From her years as an art educator to a transformative health journey that reignited her creative spirit, now shares her art, workshops, and talks to help others embrace the messy middle. And remember that creativity is essential to living fully. Whether through vibrant, layered artwork or experiential workshops, she inspires people to feel more alive, grounded, and connected. Today, we dive into her journey of self-discovery, the lessons she's learned about creativity and healing, and how she's building a business that nurtures both her art and her well-being. Welcome, Precious. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. Can't wait for this discussion.
Likewise. Well, it sounds like your business is quite unique in the sense that you're not just an everyday artist, like even like the story of you becoming an artist is quite unique in how you took it full time at least. So can you tell us a little bit more about, in your words, not mine, what it is that you do, what makes your business more unique than, what you would expect from someone saying I'm an artist?
Yeah, so I started this career much later in life. I'm in my 50s, and I had taught elementary art for close to 30 years. I was an educator and loved it with every ounce of my being. I had received awards and fellowships, and, I was an advocate for my profession, and I would speak in different places, and just really, I was all in. But what happened was in 2015, I became really sick. And it kind of spiraled out of control. And it got to a point that in 2022, my doctor put me out on leave. And when my doctor put me out on leave, I thought for sure I was going back to the classroom. But I got into the point where I couldn't bathe myself or even dress myself. I had really taken a turn. And so I was asked when I was coming back, and I wasn't sure. So I was kind of pushed out, like I was kind of forced to retire early. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because one door closes, another one opens, right? And I had lost my identity. I am not going to lie. I was deflated. I was angry. I was sad. I felt isolated and alone because everything I knew was gone. But as I always had done, I had turned to my art. Funny story, I had never called myself an artist, even though I was an art teacher for most of the 30 years that I taught. But I just turned to it because it always healed me. It always made me have clarity and understanding and confidence that things would be okay. And so I started doing that, and it took a couple years and a lot of self-doubt, but then something kind of switched one day, and I realized that my life wasn't over, that my career wasn't over, that I just needed to change the gears to make sure that I was doing what was calling me now. And that's kind of how I transitioned to being an artist and making this into a career. I really have a strong belief that everyone is an artist, and that we all have this creative side inside of us. And that's kind of how I lead. And the other thing that you had mentioned at the beginning is I have this thing about my core, and I know who I am at my core, and I didn't have that. Other than to say that I was a teacher, I didn't know who I was at my core until this unfolding happened in 2023.
Wow, I like what you're saying there because you started off talking about like identity loss, but then you're like, no, I found my core, which is really this thing that as you become an entrepreneur, you have to do a little bit more, which is separate yourself from the work. When you start your own business, it's less about the business and more about yourself. And it's less about, approaching people and saying, what do you do? What work do you do? And it's more about connecting with them as who they are, which, I love that journey that you have gone through. And I would like to hear from you a little bit more about how does that transpire when you're working with people? Because, part of your experience or the work that you do, I should say, is, helping adults kind of like reconnect to being creative and all that. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're kind of like infusing what you're doing into or like, sorry, the experience that you went through into your business with working with other adults, I think that's such a cool thing to hear more about.
Yeah, so there's a famous quote, and I'm not going to quote it word for word, and you probably know the artist, Pablo Picasso, and he's quoted as saying, every child is born an artist. It's how to remain one as we grow old or as we become adults. And I always had that quote in my classroom. And it's so funny because adults would walk into my classroom to volunteer and they would be like, I'm here to help, but I don't know how to draw a stick figure. I can't draw a straight line. I'm here to help, but I don't know how I'm going to really help you. And a month later, they would be sitting with my students, painting, drawing, working with clay, printmaking, whatever we were doing. Those volunteers, whether they were parents or grandparents or brothers or older brothers or sisters, they would be creating again. And so as I went on this journey for myself, I realized, wow, that's really holds true for most adults. I myself didn't call myself an artist until really about a year and a half ago. And I had my business up and running, but I just really struggled with things. I think part of it is that you have to make people feel safe. And you have to allow them to see themselves as creative beings. So you create a safe space and you listen to their fears and you listen to what their challenges are. I always ask that at the beginning of any workshop or class that I teach. I always have them write down what gets in the way of you being an artist, or what gets in your way of thinking about yourself in a positive way as a creative person. And once they write it down, I said, don't worry, nobody's going to see it unless you want to share. Crumple it up, throw it over your shoulder, or throw it in the trash. Like we eradicate those thoughts right away. And then we go into how does making art make you feel? I want you to think back to when you were a kid, and you can do this right now. Think about when you were a kid and you got that brand new box of crayons and you opened it up and you smelled them and they were shiny and new and all the colors. How did that make you feel? Don't we all want that feeling in our lives every day, right? So it's about that joy and that wonder. We've lost that, right? As grown-ups, we get lost in the day-to-day. We become perfectionists, which is really, really harmful to us. And we just forget how to play and be wonderful, like be wondrous and curious about the world that we live in. So I try to bring that back into people's everyday life by showing them things that, whether it's my own work or guiding them through steps to help them just have fun and play and be loose. But that's kind of like some of the little tidbits of things that I do.
Yeah, I love that. Can you tell me a little bit about, or, for anyone listening here that's sort of either on the fence or, toying with the idea of a hobby or not even there, they're just kind of listening to this and going, wow, I don't really have an outlet for creativity anymore, which I feel like tends to happen to a lot of us throughout our adulthood. We go sort of through phases. What would you say to them? How would you help them in that situation to kind of get them out of this, work, binge TV, sleep kind of cycle, autopilot that a lot of us eventually find ourselves in?
Yeah, so threefold, right? There's three big things. First of all, be present. Take a walk or just look around, go somewhere different and look around and think about what you see. Look closely. What do you see? Lines, shapes, textures, colors. Find something that really gets you excited, something that lights you up. Sometimes it's going to a different place, right? Like going on vacation. How do you feel when you go to vacation? You feel amazing. And it isn't just because you left the work behind. It's because you're in a different place that lights you up, right? Whether it's the mountains or the beach. But absorb it, take it in, and just acknowledge that that's part of being creative, is follow your curiosities, notice the world around you. And that's part of like getting out of that rut. The next thing is that you want to, oh my gosh, I lost my second thing. I hate when that happens. It's years and years of teaching, I'm telling you. It like your brain, because the kids are always pinging you around. But another thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you understand that you are already creative. That's what I wanted to say. You are already creative and you're doing it every day in some way. Maybe you're like the best at organizing. And so you have a way of organizing your space that makes your space really feel welcoming and homey and warm, right? That's being creative. Maybe it's cooking or baking and you like to put things in there that's a flair that somebody might not have thought of ever doing. And you just have fun with that, right? That's being creative. Gardening, like going out and getting your hands in the dirt. Well, guess what? When you're arranging your flowers, you are using that side of your brain that you need. The third thing and most important thing is you have to commit to a practice every day. You want to take 5, 10, 15 day, even up to 20 minutes. And I know it sounds like, oh my gosh, I don't have 20 minutes, but you have 5 to 10 minutes that you can spare. Stop the doom scrolling, get out a piece of paper, grab a sketchbook, and just doodle. Like make simple marks, take your wine, dip your finger in your wine or your coffee or your tea or hot chocolate and make little fingerprints and finger paint if you don't have paint at home. Take your junk mail and tear it up. There's nothing more refreshing than tearing up, a bunch of stuff that's frustrating that you're getting in the mail and create something from it, right? We don't have to have expensive materials to be artists. We just need to create. And maybe that's just getting a box of crayons and coloring. Even if you just do an adult coloring book, that's going to calm you, because even looking at art, and there's research that shows this, looking at art regulates your nervous system. And that is so important. So do something artful, creative every day.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that ties in back to like being present, which you mentioned.
Mhm.
It's like doom scrolling is not being present. You are subconsciously consuming a whole bunch of information that you don't need to, when you could be doing something that actually, like you said, regulates your nervous system, relaxes you, puts you in the present moment. And I really like your explanation, because I've never looked at it this way, but it's spot on that it's like your chores actually have a level of creativity to them, like when you're baking or when you're cooking, like there's a level of creativity. So instead of doing those things in autopilot, be present during them. And then that's going to start pulling out the creativity, which I love. Like I'm going to start doing more of that, of just being more present with what I'm doing and being like, this is me being creative, because you
I
don't
love
really think about it that way, but you're so right. Like all those little things are so much more than what we think they are. So
absolutely.
yeah, I love that. I want to hear a little bit more about your journey as an entrepreneur
Okay.
in terms of some of your challenges. So I don't know if maybe there's a challenge that you can share with us
Yeah.
about something that you faced and like how you worked through it, because it sounds like your story in particular is quite unique. Like it wasn't necessarily something that you decided, it was kind of forced on you to an extent. And luckily, like you had the skill sets to be able to pivot, and I think a lot of people might relate to, being in a situation where they feel like they're being pushed one way, maybe not by their own wanting, but eventually everything works out for the best of us. But being pushed in that direction, and sort of like you mentioned, I hated myself, I hated this, I hated that all these things were happening, I didn't know who I was anymore, and I had to refine that. But really, it's like looking back on it, it was all connected. So I think it would be kind of interesting to hear a little bit more about like that challenge and how you work through it.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, is that most of us probably can relate to. I had no idea what I was doing as far as starting a business. There's not a manual. No one hands you a handbook or a manual and says, here's all the steps that you need to do to get all of your licenses and your EIN number and all the things. I had no idea. There were so many things. I'm still discovering things. I'm like, oh crap, I got to do that because I didn't know that that was a thing. So I'm always learning and growing. But my biggest challenge, honestly, was I had to get out of my own way.
Mm.
I am a perfectionist by nature. I have always been a perfectionist. And I have these critics, and they're in the back seat now, but for a long time, they were driving the bus. I had, the people pleaser, anxiety, the judge, the imposter. And these 5 were just like, they were driving the bus. They were keeping me from owning being an artist. I couldn't even, like, people would say, what are you doing these days? Or, and I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of creating some art for fun. And, I'm just kind of, my voice would drop down. I wasn't like, I'm an artist. This is what I do. I love helping people find beauty in the world around them. I love helping them see the wondrous things that exist all around us. I didn't know how to say that because I was still worried that I wasn't good enough. And then I learned that I was, because success isn't perfectionism. Success isn't overworking ourselves. Success isn't working ourselves into burnout. Success is showing up for yourself every single day and not giving up when things are hard. And once I redefined that in my brain, which took a little bit of rewiring, I realized, heck yeah, I'm an artist. And this is what I love to do. I've always been an artist since I was a little tiny kid, but I had to own it in a way that helped me understand that the reason that I'm here is not just to create physical art, which obviously I love to do, and it's an important part of who I am, but it's to help others find their path to that regulation, that joy, that inner light, that inner beauty, that inner wonder, the curiosity, and most of all, finding their joy. We live in the DC area, and I will tell you, you drive around and you look in other people when they're driving, they look angry, they look stressed. Everybody's like amped up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we just need to breathe, and we just need to fall into ourselves and listen to what is inside of us, because we have so much to offer that we don't even realize. And I'm not saying you have to give up your job and become an artist to find it. You just need to have a little bit of time each day to calm yourself and to really think about what it is that you want to be and do, and give yourself credit for when you do show up and do the hard things.
Yeah, for sure. I like what you're saying about, like, people, you're driving around, you're seeing people like so angry. And it's so true. I feel like a lot of people are putting their autopilot on anger, and they're just like constantly angry at the world. And it's like, well, you know what? It takes like a lot less energy, and you feel a lot better and a lot calmer to not be angry at the world all the time. And, mind you, there's a lot of reasons to be angry at the world right now. Like, there's a lot going on, but it's like, well, if collectively we're all angry, what is that solving? Versus if collectively we're all trying to find that joy, trying to, be happier, and everything that you just said, it's, it brings a better energy into the world as a whole. And then it's, the ripple effect is the ripple effect of positivity versus negativity, right?
Yeah.
And
Amen.
then I like what you're saying about success. One thing that I talk a lot with clients about is, they feel like they failed or this wasn't successful. And I go, okay, well, if it wasn't successful, what were we measuring as our success? And they said, I don't know. I'm like, well, you had no measurement for success. So anything you did was going to be a failure, because you don't know when you've actually hit success for yourself. You're at that point, you're putting that externally on other people. And by that, I mean, it's like you're watching someone else that has a similar business or the same business, and they've been doing it for so much longer. So you're seeing what their success looks like, and you want your success to be like that. Okay, that's great. But they're at year 10 and you're at year 2. So what does year 2 success look like? It can look like that.
Right.
But like, do you actually want that success right now? Can you hold that success, And what I mean by that, it's, if someone were to give you $1 million right now, like, can you actually hold that? Do you know what to do with that $1 million? Like, where's it going? Or are you just going to burn through it and freak out because you're not prepared for it?
Yeah, that's so true. So true. The comparison is a thief of joy. And I always call them the comparison creeps for a reason. And that's because they creep into our psyche, and we get that comparison creep in there, and we can't let it go. We want to measure ourselves to others. And sometimes we measure ourselves to ourselves too, right? We measure ourselves like, well, we should be further along, or I used to be really good at this. Like, for a long time, I was comparing myself as a teacher. I had won major awards for teaching, and had done amazing things for my students in my school community. But I had to realize that it was okay to take a step back and just be where I was and grow into the role and the person or the artist that I was going to be.
Yeah. Wow. I like that. A lot of people could probably relate to that. It's like, well, I went from a 9 to 5 career to now an entrepreneur, and there's a lot of things that you need to relearn. And if you were extremely successful in your career, that comparison will definitely creep up like that. That's a great point. I'm interested to know, was there ever a moment that you thought about giving up, and what kept you going?
Oh, all the time, because I would get rejection letter after rejection letter saying no thank you when I would you know when I'm like applying to be into shows. I can't tell you, like I have a stack of rejection letters and I started saving them because for every no that I got, I wanted to celebrate when I got that one win. It showed that it didn't matter. All this didn't matter. That one win was the yes, that in the right place at the right time for the right thing. But one moment in particular was 2 Christmases ago. My husband and we decided we would do a holiday pop-up. Rented a room in a community center. And I mean, it took all week to prepare for this. He's a photographer. And so he does this beautiful photography, and it's really cool. And so we're like, he's got all these photos. I've got all these paintings. Let's have a show together. So we rent this space, and we rented it for 4 hours. 3 people came. 3 people. One person bought something. I was deflated. I was beside myself. I was like thinking, what am I doing this for? Why would I even go further? Like, nobody wants my art. My art is crap, clearly, right? Nobody bought it. Nobody shows up. Nobody, you just get all those things in your head. But then a day or two later, I get an email from the woman who bought that one painting. She paid $20 for it. It's a small little painting. She loved it. And we had this great conversation, an amazing conversation. And thinking back, it isn't about the validation that I got an email from her that was glowing. It's like it was when I was teaching. It's this: you never know whose life you're going to change, what difference you're going to make. And that's why we do what we do as entrepreneurs, right? No matter what field you're in, you do it because you have a passion and a love for doing what you do. And I realized I didn't need validation. All those rejection letters, they didn't matter. Even the one single yes was great, because in that one person's life, they saw something in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself. Yeah. And that's what mattered, is that I'm growing and learning, and I'm making a difference doing what I love. And that's the validation. You're doing something you love.
I love it. I love what you're saying. So many things from there. One, the celebration, I think, is so important. A lot of the times we forget to celebrate the wins, which means that we get so hung up on the things that didn't go our way, like all that stack of rejection letters. If you're not focused on being like, when that win comes in, we're popping the bubbly, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing you have to remember to celebrate. Sometimes they're big wins, sometimes they're small wins. It doesn't really matter, but you have to celebrate them. And I love what you're saying about, although the success of that show wasn't what you wanted it to be, obviously, like you would have preferred to have hundreds of people, thousands of people walk by. But like you said, as entrepreneurs, we're doing this for something bigger, and that's to make an impact in someone's life. And I always say to clients, I'm like, if you're in this to make a killing of money, I mean, you totally could. Doesn't matter what industry you're doing. But if you're here to do that, I almost would suggest to you, go back to a corporate job, climb the career ladder, and don't stress about running a business. Because running a business, like you said at the beginning, there's so many things that you don't know. And every year you're learning new things that you didn't know, right? So unless you're prepared for that, unless you're prepared to have a business that makes an impact, again, no matter what you could be a cleaner. That impacts someone's life regardless of, cleaning. Like cleaning their house is impactful. Every time a cleaner comes over, I'm like, thank you. You're the best. You're an angel. Like the best thing ever. Like you're impacting my life, even though like, quote unquote, it's not like you're a massage therapist or someone that's like physically changing or altering something. Like it does not matter. You're always having an impact. So if you're here to make a crap ton of money as an entrepreneur, can you do it? Absolutely. But it's going to be less of a headache if you do it in a career, especially if you're not focused on the things that you just mentioned of doing something that you love, having an impact on people. If you're focused on those two things, doing something you love and having an impact on people, you're going to be so successful. You will make a lot of money. But
Yeah.
if you're just here for the money, do yourself a favor, go back to the career path because it's less of a headache, like there's a lot less going on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot less going on. Okay, so we have a few minutes left in our recording. So I wanted to go over at least one of the questions that you sent over that you wanted coaching on. So
Okay.
the one that popped out to me was about growing visibility in an aligned and sustainable way. So you wrote to me that you're interested in exploring how to use podcasts and social media strategically to grow your audience, attract collectors and clients, and build trust without burnout or feeling like I have to perform or constantly produce content.
Mhm.
Okay, so I love this question. So podcasts are awesome because it gives you a platform to have basically what's considered like long content, because most of the times your social media, you're doing things very quick for, like you said, the doom scrollers, it's like 30 seconds, a minute, not longer than that. But on a podcast, you really can have a full-on conversation about anything and everything. And people stick around for that. They're putting those on when they're driving somewhere. They're putting it on while they're cleaning their houses. So they're kind of tuned into it in a different way. So do you actually have like a concept or an idea for your podcast?
No, not yet. I mean, it would be something related to obviously creativity and discovering your own light, love, wonder, joy, and connection, because that's such an important part of what the message that I want to get out. So it would be something that, like, maybe even little ways that you can find joy in your day-to-day life, or find creativity in your day-to-day life. I have a newsletter, and those are kinds of things that I talk about regularly.
Okay. I love that. Two things are coming up for me. One, the things that you just mentioned of like finding a little joy in life ties into your social media strategy. Putting that out there on your social media is amazing. People are going to love that stuff. People are going to relate to it. You're spreading your sparkle, your joy onto people, and people are going to save and reshare that stuff because it's feel good content. And every time someone reshares something or passes it on to someone else, the algorithm of whatever social media platform you're on loves you because they're like, you're helping us keep people on our platform. So keep that in mind, that if you do anything at all, it's just content that not only is representative of what you're doing, of like what you sell, what you do, but also things that are going to be reshared. And what I mean by that is like, don't film a cat and talk about the cat's clothing if that has nothing to do with your business, right? So you
Exactly.
always want it to be somewhat connected. But the other thing is, I almost feel, and you do what you feel more called to, like in the end, this is coaching, it's back and forth, it's a conversation, but you're an artist. So I almost feel like visuals are strong for you. And maybe YouTube is where you need to be instead of podcasts.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Because you're a very creative and visual person
Mhm.
yourself, I think you can have a lot of fun with doing video instead of just doing your voice.
Okay. I love that idea.
Yeah,
I
okay,
have a
well,
channel, but I haven't used it in ages.
time to revive it. And the thing with YouTube is that it almost gives you more fluidity into what you can do in terms of content because you can create different playlists on your channel. So you could have one channel that's all about like getting started as an artist or getting started finding your creativity. And you can do a whole bunch of videos around that. And then you can do another kind of playlist that is all about, spreading kindness.
Okay.
And maybe those are like acts of kindness that you're doing,
Oh my
right?
gosh. Yeah.
So with the podcast, you're a little bit more limited. And when I say this, it's because you're kind of creating, like your podcast name and the description of what it's about. So you're a little bit more limited into the exploration aspect of it because you're kind of locked into that versus on YouTube, you could have a channel that's all about like creativity, joy, and love and have different playlists. So you're kind of tapping into a whole bunch of different things that people are interested in.
Okay. You got my wheels turning.
Okay, good. I love that. And this is the thing. So social media, no matter what social media platform you're on, first of all, I would get clear on who your ideal client is. If your ideal client is, when you're talking about collectors, where are they hanging out? Maybe it's a platform that I don't even know of, right? Because it's a little bit more of a curated set of people. Like it
Mhm.
might not be Instagram, it might not be Facebook, it might not be LinkedIn. So if your clientele is like Gen Z, for example, they're hanging out on TikTok. You're
Mm.
gonna have to go play over there, whether you like it or not, unfortunately. Like you kind of have to meet your ideal client
Yeah.
where they're hanging out. So first I would figure that out. But in all honesty, if you go the YouTube route, I almost want to say like that's your social media platform and you don't really need to add anything else.
Oh, wow. That would be great. Because I
Right?
feel stretched between so many platforms, right? Trying to make content for LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. And yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
So if you go the route of YouTube, YouTube is an amazing platform. First of all, Google owns YouTube, which means that whenever someone's searching something, it usually populates YouTube videos as well, which is great. And you kind of get brownie points. Also, Google's like, yeah, you're hanging out with us. We love you, right? So I would say stick to the YouTube idea if that has your wheels turning and that's inspiring you. And anything that you create on YouTube, you can just take those videos and post it anywhere else. But choose one platform as your main focus until you get really good at it and you're like, this is my bread and butter. I don't even have to think about creating content. It's just like I set up my camera and I go and I paint and, like I'm done,
Yeah.
if that feels really good, and once you get like your wheels turning and you're excited, then you can just take that content, start posting it on other platforms that you feel your ideal client is hanging out on, which could be
Mhm.
Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And then if you have time, then you can get more specific with, I'm noticing that on Facebook, what's doing really well is actually pictures of my art versus like videos, right? And then you can
Yeah.
start tweaking it. But first, you need to find the place that you want to hang out in.
Okay.
Then find where your people hanging out, the ones that you want as your ideal client, and then
Okay.
you can kind of start strategizing that way, but adding to it. Otherwise, you will experience burnout because there's a lot of social media platforms, right?
Yes.
It's almost like a two-part. One, find what you are excited to do. And then two, diversify that into the channels that you feel your ideal client is hanging out on.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm really excited. I feel like the YouTube is going to be really fun for you because it has different platforms or different capabilities where you can do a long content like what we're doing here, or you could do a 60-second video and they get pushed out differently.
Okay. Wow.
So I don't know how much time you spent on YouTube because you said you have a channel, but you haven't gone on it. So what they have is your regular YouTube, what you're probably used to, which looks like this. You film it this way, YouTube, right?
Okay.
Long as you want it to be whatever, right?
Okay.
Then they also have what is called shorts, which is similar to like your reels and TikTok
Mhm.
videos. So those
Yeah.
are filmed like this, but they have a limit of no more than 60 seconds.
Okay.
And those get pushed out like crazy. So if you're going to start somewhere, I would start with these because even if it's something that you later on consider a crappy video, it's going to get pushed out to so many people. So it's going to start driving traffic to your channel, especially if it's been dormant for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's where I would start. But I
Okay.
really think the visual is the key. And it could be as simple as walking around your studio and say, let me show you my studio. And then maybe pointing out random things you have in your studio, right? 30
Okay.
seconds, 60 seconds, done. Then you can go into more detail about one of the paintings that you have behind you. This is the painting, blah, blah, blah. This is what mediums I use to paint. These are the colors that I use. You can get a little bit more detailed because you're kind of talking to different audiences, right? You're talking to the ones that are either going to be purchasing your paintings or the ones that are going to hire you to teach them how to paint. Like you have a lot of things that you can offer them. So then you can kind of start creating content around the different offerings that you have. Hire me as a speaker or, come do one of my workshops that's coming up. This is what we're going to be going over. You can really have a lot of fun with it.
I love this. Thank you. Yeah, when I was teaching, I had a one for school, and then I had started one for my own use, and then I just kind of, everybody's like Instagram, 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 TikTok, 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 and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just tried to do it all, and it was too much, so I ended up stopping for a while. But I use Instagram mostly now,
Mhm.
and then I have it just send to Facebook because a lot of the people that are buyers or people who bought from me have actually bought from Facebook.
Okay.
strangely enough. And then I try to every now and then do something on LinkedIn for the speaking aspect because I
There you go.
would love to do more speaking because I feel like this is a message that people need to hear.
Yeah. Okay. So I love that you've identified that. So one thing that I'm going to recommend for you is to do it the
Hmm.
other way around. If Facebook is where people are actually buying,
Hmm.
let's not make Instagram the priority. Make Facebook the priority and have that push out to your Instagram.
Okay.
Because the content on your Facebook is probably a little bit different. So you'll be able to go through your analytics and see what are people most engaging with on Facebook. You know, what drove them to buy? Was it the video of the painting or was it the actual painting, the picture of it? Right? Because Instagram video does amazing over there. But if that's not what driving sale, like you're basically telling me you're getting sales from Facebook. So what are you doing on Instagram? Get off of Instagram. Or maybe don't get off of it. You know, that's an extreme. But I think you get the point. Flip
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
around
Okay.
because if Facebook is where your clients are coming from, you don't want to be like you're on the back burner of Facebook, although this is where money's coming from. You want to be like, oh, money's coming from Facebook. Let's be friends, right? Not the other way around.
Gotcha. Thank you. This is
Yeah.
awesome advice.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So get clear on who your ideal audience is. And as you've identified, it might be a little bit different. Like on LinkedIn, it's probably when you want to where you want to talk a lot about your speaking stuff because that's where that clientele is that's going to hire over there, right? So maybe it's you're not posting there all the time, but maybe twice a month you're putting something up so people remember that they can hire you as a speaker or, you know, whatever that looks like. So get clear on like where your audience is hanging out, and that's where we want to be hanging out with them.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, learning more about your business, and I'm excited to see a lot more of your art. I'm following you on Instagram, so I'm going to be creeping.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. It's been so much fun.
Of course, it's been a pleasure hearing more about your business and your journey as an entrepreneur.